Nggak kuat ya. Airconnya nggak kuat ya. Rupanya terlalu kecil.
Iya, saya Pak panas ya Pak. Ini udah paling kecil Pak.
Maka itu 18.
Just a moment. Mr. Kao Kim Hourn still trying to enter. There's a little bit technical issue. I just reset the link. So, okay. Just a moment. Maybe we wait for a couple of minutes. Sorry for the technical issue. But there it is. Good morning, Excellency. Kao Kim Hourn. Mr. Kao Kim Hourn. Okay.
Hello. Hi. How are you? Good to see you. Welcome, welcome.
Okay. I think we can start. It's already 10.
Yes.
Past 3 minutes, so yeah. We can
My
start.
apologies.
No, no worries, no worries.
No problem.
Okay, so I think you can start.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Lina. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, and distinguished participants. Welcome to the webinar on the topic of Myanmar crisis and the future of ASEAN, organized by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS Indonesia. First of all, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Rizky from the Department of International Relations, CSIS, and I will be your host for today's events. We would like to take this opportunity to extend our utmost appreciation to His Excellency Dr. Kao Kim Hourn, Minister Delegate attached to the Prime Minister in charge of Foreign Affairs and ASEAN for the Kingdom of Cambodia. And we would also extend our utmost appreciation to His Excellency Bapak Ade Padmo Sarwono, the Permanent Representative of Indonesia to ASEAN from 2018 to 2021. We thank you both for your time and presence in today's webinar. And of course, we would like to welcome you, ladies and gentlemen, who have joined and participated in today's workshop through Zoom and YouTube. We thank you for your attendance in today's event. Today's webinar will be divided in two parts. The first part, both the speaker and the discussant will present their views on the topic. The second part will be a discussion session with the participants, where the moderator will guide the session in a question and answer Q&A format. For the audience, you can submit your questions through the Q&A features on Zoom or through the chat box on YouTube. Now, without further ado, let us start the webinar. To begin the webinar this morning, we would like to invite Dr. Philips Vermonte, Executive Director of CSIS Indonesia, to give his welcoming remarks. Dr. Philips, you may have the screen.
Thank you. Very good morning to everyone. First of all, on behalf of CSIS, I would also like to thank Excellencies Bapak Ade Padmo and Dr. Kao Kim Hourn for agreeing to speak in this webinar organized by CSIS. Also, I would like to thank all the participants for setting aside some time on your schedule to be here with us and discuss the issue of Myanmar. And as we know, Myanmar is a critical issue for ASEAN, and ASEAN has to act cohesively because now it is considered a regional crisis as well as an international crisis. CSIS has long been involved on various issues on Myanmar as a think tank, as a track 2 institution. We have been supporting Myanmar since long time ago, and we share our lessons learned and also experience. For example, in security sector reform as the key element of democratization process in the Indonesian experience, as well as probably in the Myanmarese experience. We had some kind of projects with our counterparts in Myanmar back in 2013 and 2014. And we seem to be then quite complacent as democratization seemed to move ahead in Myanmar and then in other parts in Southeast Asia, and tend to forget that democratization has always been a bumpy process, and there would be challenges along the road throughout the journey of a country such as Myanmar as well as Indonesia. Now, I think then it is time, especially for us as part at CSIS, as part of a non-governmental organization, to think through of what can be done in Myanmar and how can we advise governments in Southeast Asia in particular to find a solution, long-term solution for what happened in Myanmar, for the benefit of the people in Myanmar as well as for the benefit of the region. Because one of the ASEAN dream is to create a people-centered regional organization in Southeast Asia. And in that regard, of course, the role of the chair of ASEAN is very important. And we are glad that we have Dr. Kao Kim Hourn, that will have the ears and speak to the government of Myanmar as a chair of ASEAN for next year. And we look forward to hear from Dr. Kao Kim Hourn and from Cambodia in this regard as the next chair, and how Cambodia sees the crisis, and then what would be the agenda that will be discussed throughout the years and to be done throughout the years next year, and then so that ASEAN can live up to the expectation, not only from within the region, but also from outside the region, so that ASEAN will maintain its credibility. Thank you very much once again, and I look forward for a fruitful discussion today. Back to you, Rizky.
Thank you very much, Dr. Phillips, for your welcoming remarks. Next, we would like to invite Bapak Jusuf Wanandi, Senior Fellow and Co-founder of CSIS, to give his welcoming remarks. Pak Jusuf, you might have the screen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Minister Kao Kim Hourn, welcome back to the for CSIS. We have been working together some 30 years ago, very effectively, and I'm so glad to welcome you back to CSIS and looking forward with your chairmanship this year already starting to also, of course, assist what is ever possible to be done together in the case of Myanmar. Let me maybe give you a little bit of just an outline what we have been trying to do before. A few days ago, about a week ago, we have had a few meetings which is very intensive, not only of the ASEAN members, but also of think tanks from outside the region. And that means including the big powers. We have had a very good explanation about their views and their outlook on the Myanmar situation. And we also have discussed a lot about the domestic issues of this Myanmar crisis. And we definitely hope in the next 1 week or so, after we produce a full report on those two meetings we have had, we can also definitely send it immediately to you for your background. Well, as a matter of fact, we have been dealing with this issue since February 2021, and now we have had some kind of a efforts that is a little bit stalemated, and now we are looking forward, therefore, under your leadership, how to move the process again, because otherwise we have seen how difficult it is going to become domestically for Myanmar and the region, and also as a matter of a problem of the region, as an issue of security, as an issue of health, as an issue of economics, and etc. So therefore, I think the role of ASEAN is still really critical for looking for a solution. Although all the outside powers will be willing, I think, so far as we have discussed last week, to help, but they need somebody as a guide and as a signpost, where to go. In many cases, they have had some parts of it, but they have not completely a full part, and therefore the information from ASEAN and the background and also the support that they need from us is very real for the future. So I'm looking forward under the Cambodian, leadership, that we can enlighten this on this forum and the next ones of this, especially finding a solution to this very complicated problem as well. And we are thanking you that you will be that you are willing to deal with us, on your views at the beginning of the chairmanship, and that so that we can prepare ourselves also better for this future, and especially keeping in mind that after Cambodia, Indonesia will take the leadership. So that this is an issue that will hang on us for a few more years, definitely, and therefore our cooperation is very much needed in the future. Thank you so much for coming, Minister Kao Kim Hourn. Welcome again.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Jusuf, for your welcoming remarks. And with that, this very minute, we will start the first part of this webinar. I would like to remind the audience once again that you can ask questions through the Q&A features on Zoom or through the chat box on YouTube, and we will get to it after the discussion. I will first introduce our moderator of the day. Dr. Lina Alexandra is a senior researcher at the Department of International Relations at CSIS Indonesia. She will be moderating both the discussions and later the Q&A section. I will now invite Dr. Lina to the screen. Dr. Lina, you may have this floor.
All right, thank you so much, Rizky. Good morning once again, Excellencies, Minister Kao Kim Hourn, and also Excellency Ambassador Ade Padmo Sarwono, for joining us today and they will be sharing with us, of course, very valuable insights and views regarding very important topic that we are facing now in the region. As we know, it's been 9 months away after the crisis started in Myanmar. And we also monitor, we also see that ASEAN has done some efforts, both informal and formal, which then we all know culminated in the 5-point consensus and the appointment of the special envoy. But again, we have to admit that no significant progress happening on the ground, especially regarding the implementation of the consensus. No cessation of hostilities or violence against the civilians, no massive delivery of humanitarian assistance, including for COVID-19 reliefs, let alone the facilitation of the political dialogue. With this worsening situation, ASEAN's credibility is at stake. Is ASEAN still relevant if it cannot deal with its own problem? As much as ASEAN worries or anxious about the external intervention, the fact that it cannot handle its own problem, definitely something that we should worry about, actually. And toward the end of the year, and we are welcoming the next year, we have a glimmer of hope with the transition of the chairmanship to Cambodia to take up the position next year as the chairman. ASEAN chair basically is a coordinating role, but actually it is a crucial position to set the organization's agenda as well as the strategy to deal with the problems that ASEAN has been facing so far, in which the Myanmar crisis is particularly a very, very crucial issue for ASEAN. There are 3 challenges, of course, to summarize from what Pak Phillips and Pak Jusuf have mentioned earlier. The first one, of course, to push for the concrete implementation of the 5-point consensus. Second, to restore ASEAN's credibility, as well as on how to coordinate and garner support for ASEAN from multiple stakeholders and coordinate with these regional powers. As Pak Jusuf mentioned earlier, we in CSIS have taken up some initiatives to listen to various stakeholders, both state and non-state actors, from the second track especially, on how these regional powers have leverages as well as limitations in order to support ASEAN in this issue. But today, of course, we will certainly look forward to hear on how Cambodia has prepared the plan, the agenda, as well as the strategy, and to what extent this Myanmar crisis has been situated in the overall Cambodia's agenda for next year. So without further ado, I would like to invite Excellency Minister Kao Kim Hourn to present your views, and later on we will have Ambassador Ade Padmo to share some views from the Indonesian perspective as well. So, Minister, you have around 15 minutes to share your presentation. Please, the screen is yours.
Well, first of all, let me thank the host, CSIS, for organizing this important seminar, very timely. And I'm happy to join this seminar to share my view of a Cambodian position with regard to the upcoming role as chair, but also on the current situation in Myanmar. At the outset, also, I want to extend my greetings, warm greetings to Pak Jusuf Wanandi. He's an old guru, very senior guru that we have not met for some time, but it's good to see. Thank you so much. And I want to also send my greeting to all participants, of course, the moderators and the ambassador and the important here. Well, I think the topic is very good. I think you put it right on, is Myanmar crisis in the future of ASEAN. if looking at the current developments, and we go back a bit to the early part of this year, but also recently, just recently concluded ASEAN summits and related summits, the 38, 39 ASEAN summits and related summits. We have seen, or basically we can look back and see the actual milestones of ASEAN this year, what ASEAN has trying to do. And I want to underline the point that first, I think Myanmar, Brunei as the chair for this year has made a lot of effort to move the ASEAN process. And one of the great achievements we can see is that the ASEAN's ability to convene the ASEAN leaders meeting in Jakarta in April, to get all the ASEAN leaders to be in Jakarta and to really to have a frank discussion among the ASEAN leaders on the Myanmar crisis. And that's why they came up with the 5-point consensus. I think this is really to the point, how can ASEAN assist Myanmar? Since then, of course, what transpired during the ASEAN summits and related summits, and Myanmar did not participate in those meetings. I think this has really caused a major concern for ASEAN. Even my own prime minister asked the question why. I mean, it's not ASEAN expelling Myanmar, but Myanmar abandoned its rights and, of course, its role and responsibility as ASEAN chair. Of course, this is the first time that we have seen in the history of ASEAN that a family member opted out of the ASEAN meetings. Now, of course, it's not what happened in Myanmar is not just an issue of Myanmar alone or just an issue for ASEAN alone. It is much bigger than that, because ASEAN today is engaging all the major powers and all the key players from around the world. So what is at stake is important for ASEAN. Now, of course, for Cambodia, I think fast forward a little bit here, is that our chairmanship will start on January 1st, 2022. Okay. Technically, the chairmanship of Brunei will continue on until December 31st, although the handover, the symbolic handover chairmanship is there. And I think it's important is that for us is that we will continue the ASEAN agenda. Okay, what is the ASEAN agenda and priorities? And you're right to say that ASEAN chair has a role to define the priorities, the strategic priorities, to define the agenda, the strategic agenda of ASEAN. And I think that's very true that every year, one of the 10 ASEAN member states has opportunity to lead ASEAN in close cooperation, in close partnership with every ASEAN member state to work together in the spirit of unity, solidarity, so that we can move together as an intergovernmental regional organization. For Cambodia, I think we already looking at a number of competing priorities, top priorities for ASEAN. First, COVID-19. I think this really hit the heart of all ASEAN member states, let alone the whole world. COVID-19 will not go away anytime soon. So the priority of ASEAN is to save the lives of our people. Because we talk about ASEAN Center, ASEAN People Center, or People Center ASEAN, or People-Oriented ASEAN. So the priority will continue to focus on the lives of people and to recover and to focus on economic recovery for people. So COVID-19 is going to be the key, one of the keys of one of the key priorities for ASEAN. Second, of course, I mean, before I move to second, on this issue alone, is that also we have to look at how we can reconnect ASEAN. Because what I can say is that the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted everything, including connectivity. And I think to reconnect ASEAN again, ASEAN meaning all stakeholders, the people, the economy, everything. Also with ASEAN dialogue partners. So reconnecting is going to be a critical area that we have to focus on. Second issue is, we can say, of course, will be Myanmar. Myanmar is going to be here for some time, because Myanmar as a country is very complex. And I think we should not underestimate what's happening on the ground. But I would say that ASEAN has more than 50 years of experience, more than 50 years of conflict management, conflict resolution. ASEAN has, over this more than 5 decades, been able to transform itself. Okay, so I think we have to count on the ASEAN wisdom and leadership there. So on Myanmar crisis is that what we're going to do is that we have to engage Myanmar constructively. Okay, through whatever means that we have, include quiet diplomacy. We have to keep Myanmar engaged. We cannot allow Myanmar to be disengaged from ASEAN. So we have to continue to engage. Of course, it's not easy at the moment, but I think is that we cannot put on too much condition before, say, special envoy going to Myanmar. Because one of the greatest achievements of ASEAN has been the diplomatic engagement, the power consultations and dialogue. We need dialogue at this critical moment. The moment dialogue is shut down, this is where we have major problem. So the idea is to keep the door, whatever door we have, to keep all doors open, okay, and engage with Myanmar. Because Myanmar have different stakeholders. You have those in power and those who are outside power, you see. So we have to engage all parties involved, and we have to start from somewhere. We don't start everything simultaneously. We have to start from somewhere. I think this is very, very important, is to stay engaged, so that, because the priority is to move the dialogue process along, to move the assistance, the humanitarian assistance to the needy people of Myanmar. They need the assistance at this critical juncture. And if this assistance cannot be delivered, then we're not helping the people there. So I think it's that we have to work with those who's in charge at the moment. I think once this process moving, the issue of the future of Myanmar, I think it's up to the Myanmar people to decide. But the bottom line is that we should not put too many carts before the horse, you see. So I think this is very, very important, is that yes, dialogue, because I think we have the 5-point consensus already. When we engage Myanmar through the dialogue, is that we have already the 5-point consensus on the table, that we need to make sure that these 5-point consensus will be able to make progress. But we cannot focus on the 5-point consensus without get the dialogue moving first. And so that's critical. The third issue, of course, is going to be the South China Sea. It's going to be another priority. Next year will be the 20th anniversary of the DOC. Okay, you may recall that the DOC was signed in 2002 in Phnom Penh. And we hope that this is going to be an important milestone for ASEAN and China to work together to review the progress, 20 years of DOC, how much progress have made, what are the remaining challenges, what are the remaining priorities. And then we move on, particularly, we hope that we can also make some concrete progress on the drafting of COC. the COC is going to be the critical issue for ASEAN. And of course, our work with China. I think every ASEAN member state, not just the claimant states, because we have ASEAN, we have claimant states and non-claimant states. But I think on the COC, we have the opportunity to work together within ASEAN, between ASEAN and China. And of course, the idea is that we must focus on the substance, because on the one hand, we focus on the speed, right? But then also on the substance. I think we should look at the speed. So I think this is going to be an important year. Next year is going to be an important year for us to look at the South China issue. It's continue on. I mean, South China Sea has been here for a long time, and it will be there for many years to come. I think we have to look at the progress, the achievements that we have made. Okay, and then we're looking at what are some other areas, other issues that we can continue to work on, because in the past, particularly in the DOC, we're looking at the implementation of the confidence measure, confidence building measure activities that we can increase trust, we can increase confidence, and we can increase our activities in a way that will lead to more cooperation. So this is the third I think priority that will be for ASEAN in 2022 and in 2022. Now, of course, there's many other issues that ASEAN will be working on besides these three. There are certainly, engaging with our dialogue partners, other partners, because how will our dialogue partners continue to support ASEAN centrality? It's going to be critical when we are now engaging with Myanmar, and basically what transpired at the 28-29 ASEAN summits and related summit is that we have ASEAN -1, you see. It's not ASEAN 10, okay? So I think we will have to look at how we can come up with the overall ASEAN spirit so that we can work together. Now, of course, we have much to do in 2022 because next year, because the hopefully by the time it's going to be post-pandemic recovery. So there's going to be a lot of more priorities, how to move not only the ASEAN agenda and priorities, but also how can ASEAN stay fully engaged, particularly in moving some of the agenda, particularly talk about the ASEAN community building vision beyond 2025. So there's a lot of things. I think I'm just giving you some of the issues here for the priorities. Now let me focus a little bit more on what I believe is important for Cambodia. 2022 is going to be our third round of ASEAN Championship. So we're not working from a vacuum here. Okay. In 2002, we had the first opportunity to chair ASEAN. And then in 2012, we also had another opportunity. And of course, like I say, we will work with all ASEAN member states to move ASEAN and to make ASEAN progress. And 2022 is going to be one of the most active years for, it's going to be a very active year for ASEAN because of all the activities that have been planned. Yeah. Now, of course, I want to come back briefly on the issue of particularly, I think has been mentioned here, on the leadership of ASEAN. Okay, and you mentioned this three issue related to leadership. Basically, is the restoring ASEAN credibility and of course also talk about how ASEAN will resolve its own internal issue. I think ASEAN leadership is based on a shared leadership here. Okay, it's a shared leadership, and we have a structure that will work together, and everyone has a role to say, you know, in everything that we discuss together. For the, I want to come back briefly on the topic, because the topic of the seminar is on Myanmar crisis. So I want to come back a little bit on the emphasis on Myanmar crisis and also the future of ASEAN. I think on Myanmar crisis, we will need collective wisdom. Okay, not just Cambodia alone. That's what we've been doing also. We support Brunei for 2021. And the ASEAN collective wisdom was, we were able to support Myanmar fully. For Cambodia, we need the full support also from all ASEAN member states, so that we work together. It's not Cambodia alone, it's going to be all of us. You know, if we are successful, we are going to be successful together. If we fail, we all will fail. You see? But I believe that we will make progress, because we all want to see ASEAN succeed. We also want to see Myanmar succeed. You see? So I think from that perspective, we will be able to work together. And I want to say that since now, between now until January, we still have some months, because essentially Brunei is still the chair of ASEAN. Like, for example, the upcoming ASEAN-China Commemorative Summit. It will be co-chaired by Brunei as the chair on behalf of ASEAN, and of course with China will be China. So I want to emphasize that effectively Brunei is still the chair of ASEAN. Okay, so I think it's very, very important for us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Excellency Minister Kao Kim Hourn, for your excellent presentation. I think we are now having the clear view on what will be the Cambodia's agenda for the chairmanship next year, in which the Myanmar crisis is one of them. Gladly, we see this. And of course, as you mentioned, although Cambodia will be taking up the chairmanship role, it will be the collective efforts of all ASEAN member states that will help ASEAN to achieve success in dealing with the crisis. So I think with that, of course, we can discuss again later on the issues on how to actually create these collective efforts, because as we know, ASEAN now is quite clear having a disunity among themselves, particularly in viewing the Myanmar crisis. With that, I would like to invite Ambassador Ade Padmo Sarwono to share your view, to discuss the points that Minister Kao Kim Hourn already mentioned, and particularly on how Indonesia seeing this crisis, and probably give some suggestions on the collective efforts part as the oldest member of ASEAN, the founder of ASEAN itself. Please, Ambassador.
Thank you, Lina, and very good morning to all. And I was also to say also thank you, Pak Jusuf, Pak Phillips, for having me in this webinar. And I also like to welcome back Excellency Kao Kim Hourn back to us. Hopefully, see you soon in the ASEAN circle. And I do believe with your experience and able capacity to bring Cambodia in leading us ASEAN next year as the chairmanship of ASEAN. And I also like to appreciate Excellency Kao Kim Hourn about his view on this issue. Several has been mentioned by Excellency Kao Kim Hourn, and I have some I fully agree with him, especially that it's important to continue dialogue engagement with Myanmar, because this is the only key when we want to solve the issue about the what's so-called the Myanmar crisis. If there is no communication, no engagement, it's rather impossible to deal or to address or to find solution about on the crisis. ASEAN is a family. You know what we are doing toward Myanmar is nothing more than is a family helping one of its member. So we also would like to see Myanmar on the other end also have to be sincere as well to welcome ASEAN member state and ASEAN to help them. This unfortunately, since the 5-point consensus has been agreed by ASEAN leaders, we haven't seen any significant progress on the implementation, as many has been mentioned. It's very difficult, you know, if one want to lend his hand, but the other not to accept, sincerely accept, it's difficult to to find a way for solving this matter. So we would like to see, and we urge actually Myanmar junta right now to fully implement and fully working with ASEAN, work with us, you know. We're not trying to alienate Myanmar. In fact, as has been mentioned, Myanmar alienate itself rather than us alienate Myanmar. It's not be good for Myanmar and also to some extent not good as well to ASEAN. And this issue already dragged almost a year. Next year will be a year of this crisis. Now, what ASEAN should do, as I said, I agree that continued dialogue engagement is important. But the dialogue, again, I have to underline, the dialogue engagement that we're going to have, it should be sincere and not just just for the sake that just for showing commitment, but also implementing concretely. This that ASEAN have to be more cohesive on this approach, and the wisdom of the leaders. I do believe all the wisdom with all experience. I know Cambodia is also have very vast experience how they in the past reconciliation in Cambodia. So I have a confidence on Cambodia with a lot of experience, and probably the experience that Cambodia went through can also be shared to Myanmar as well. It's important to have reconciliation and how to build reconciliation. So all parties have to be sit on the table in the same table. The differences have to be discussed and find way how to move forward on bringing stability in Myanmar. So this important for ASEAN. I know there is several criticism as well, toward ASEAN, and has been mentioned as well that sometimes we are slow, but this is this is a process that we have to go through. The gradual approach, but again, we need to Myanmar open up with this ASEAN effort, and also ASEAN already has experience. Unfortunately, the Myanmar case is not the first time. Unfortunately, this is we experienced as well in the past. Although the actors is a little bit it's different. I could say in the past, probably the actor is a little more open with ASEAN. Unfortunately, the current who in power in Myanmar is not yet open up with to ASEAN. So I think this is the difference. It's very unfortunate for the situation that we've been experienced this in the past, but unfortunate as well the attitude of the actors in Myanmar is a bit different with in the past, while they're able to open up with us, especially if you recall during the Nargis issue. At the beginning, Myanmar authority there didn't want to accept international assistance, but with the involvement of ASEAN, then the Myanmar authority agreed to accept international assistance, and in fact is helping the people and helping the move forward the process of the democratization in Myanmar. So this experience show that the presence of Myanmar is helping them, not only helping ASEAN but helping them, and also give confidence as well to from international community that Myanmar is ready to work with ASEAN and also with international community. The decision last time during the summit with that presence of Myanmar is very unfortunate as well. The chair has sent an invitation, but Myanmar decided not to come. So basically, the summit, although only attended by nine ASEAN member states, is a legitimate summit because the invitation is there. We not exclude Myanmar, but it's a decision of Myanmar not attending. And in the discussion in the summits, no one, if you're talking about cohesive, no leaders object and question the summit. So I think I should say there is a cohesiveness in ASEAN. Although the differences is how to approach it, but there is a cohesiveness in ASEAN to the important to address to deal with the crisis in Myanmar, and we are ready continue engage with Myanmar, and in fact the special envoy is continue also communicate with the authority there in Myanmar. So we still open. We are ASEAN is still open, and we still willing, and we still ready whenever Myanmar ready. And the second, also the decision by the foreign minister and also endorsed by the leaders. We also give time to Myanmar to settle, to deal also their own issue, and domestic. So we also give them the time and space to Myanmar as well. So what else that Myanmar asks, that ASEAN is also listen to Myanmar authority there. They want to to address the domestic issue. We give time, we give space for Myanmar, although it should be in line with ASEAN Charter principles, and we encourage to have genuine and inclusive dialogue in finding way to reconciliation. So we also give Myanmar time and space for work in dealing with the domestic situation. And so thirdly, on the back to Cambodia chairmanship next year, as I said, I have confidence on Cambodia, and I noted that one of the priority of Cambodia chairmanship is Myanmar crisis or Myanmar issue. I think it is important for not only for Cambodia as a chair, but also as ASEAN as a whole. And we need to have, find innovative ways. I don't have the idea, of course, right now, but I do believe with the past experience, the ASEAN always come up at the end of the day when they come up with an innovative ways how to address this better, and based on our experience in the past, and not only dealing with Myanmar issue, with other issue. ASEAN always come up with innovative, because sometimes we are master to create new ways or new path, in finding a solution. I think this is one sometimes we call this the ASEAN way, that we are good in creating something new, and it's always acceptable to all. So I do believe that next year, with the Cambodia as the chair and lead us ASEAN, we will find ways, But I do hope that we have sooner than later, because as Jusuf mentioned, after Cambodia, Indonesia will chair ASEAN in 2023. Will be hopefully the issue is already being, so we see some progress on the implementation of the 5-point consensus. And beyond the Myanmar crisis, this webinar also talking about, and it's been mentioned also with Excellency Kao Kim Hourn, about the ASEAN future. We, ASEAN, is always survive in facing many challenges internally, externally, and I do believe that ASEAN be able to go through this challenging, not only internally but also externally. Although ASEAN need to make some adjustment adapted to the current situation. I would like to say, like, one thing about the ASEAN Charter. You know, in how about the when ASEAN facing this crisis, although in ASEAN Charter has been mentioned, not clearly mentioned, so I think we need to for ASEAN to a little bit review of the charter, and if such kind of situation arise in the future, how the ASEAN should properly deal, you know, either in the charter or we make a guidelines or something. We have to make clear. Second, again, in the charter. About, of course, consensus, decision-making consensus is important. But if there is this decision involve or focus on one of our members, how this consensus should be about, this is also need to be thinking. I was fortunate, you know, I accompany then Pak Alatas when he was the APG in ASEAN Charter. In fact, this issue was discussed briefly, but there's not yet any conclusion.
Ambassador, sorry, if you can wrap up a little bit, I think
Okay.
your time already finished. Thank you.
So I think this for the future of ASEAN, the charter need also be reviewed, and second, for my conclusion for the future of ASEAN, the capacity and strengthening ASEAN Secretariat also should be also one of the agenda for ASEAN in the future. So I think that's all that I want to add and express my view regarding this issue. Thank you, Lina.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Ade Padmo Sarwono, for your presentation. I think I just highlight some points that you make, that ASEAN basically need to encourage the junta to work with ASEAN in dealing with its own crises. But certainly we see that ASEAN does not intend to alienate Myanmar, but it alienates itself and shy away from the regional effort with the 5-point consensus. And you certainly mentioned that you and probably also the region has the strong confidence on the capacities of Cambodia, especially as Cambodia has experienced its own internal problem in the past. And this might be shared also with the Myanmar counterpart. And lastly, you mentioned about the review of ASEAN Charter. That's definitely a very important issue to take up, especially to enable ASEAN to deal with this type of crisis. And we'll see how the discussion will go about this. So we have around 35 minutes for discussion, and I have already a line of questions in the Q&A box here. If I may start to raise up some points. The first question, some questions for Minister Kao Kim Hourn first from Waikit Leong. The first question is regarding the legitimacy issue that ASEAN will be facing soon because of the competition that the tension that we are seeing within Myanmar between the Myanmar military and the NUG so-called government. How do you see this, and how do you think ASEAN will face this particular issue? And of course, there has been pressure for ASEAN to openly engage and recognize NUG. And how do you see ASEAN will deal with this issue? And second, how should ASEAN define a major progress by Senior General Min Aung Hlaing? in order for the bloc consider including him in the future meetings. Basically, I think this can be framed also in the issue of the implementation of the 5-point consensus. And we can also tie with the third question regarding the upcoming special envoy, because the current special envoy from Brunei, Dato' Eriwan Yusof, will finish his term as the special envoy, and there will be the next one. So how do you see Cambodia will shape the role of the special envoy, especially as the chair, as well as how to foresee the possible collaboration or synergy between the special envoy of the ASEAN and the new UN special envoy, Ms. Noeleen Heyzer. The other question also for Excellency Minister Kao Kim Hourn is also, in the past, ASEAN have failed to produce joint statement in 2012 when Cambodia was the chairman at that time. How do you think Cambodia can ensure that in 2022, ASEAN in 2022 will be different from the 2012? Do you think, particularly regarding this issue, a joint statement on Myanmar can be produced under Cambodian leadership? And then for Ambassador Ade Padmo, there are also some questions. Basically, since the beginning of creation, ASEAN has been quite focusing on economic integration and maintaining peace and stability in the region. And Indonesia has been perceived as the de facto leader in ASEAN and has been playing mediation role in a lot of issues. How do you see Indonesia will once again serve as the bridge between Myanmar and ASEAN, basically supporting the Cambodia's chairmanship, as we are talking about the collective effort? And how do you see also particularly the current administration in Indonesia prioritize the Myanmar issue? Because as we know, Indonesia has been busy with other issues as well. And the last question is also, what and how will Indonesia and other countries assist Myanmar during this time of crisis without violating ASEAN principles of non-interference? I think this is for all speakers. I'll stop there first. This is quite a lot of questions, so I will allow now Minister Kao Kim Hourn to respond to the questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I will not respond to specific issue, but I'm going to take perhaps the whole questions and then I try to respond all of them together. But the question of legitimacy will always be there. Legitimacy of the Myanmar government. That's one issue. I think that will up to the Myanmar people to decide in the future when they will organize the election. That's when the issue of legitimacy will be able to deal with, because this is the only way. Because it's not, I think, on the one hand, is that at the end of the day, the people in Myanmar will have to decide who will be their rightful, legitimate leader, okay, or leadership. So I think it will come about only through a transparent, credible, free and fair election. Of course, that sometime down the road, but I think the most important thing right now is that to get the dialogue moving on the ground, I think, between ASEAN and those who are in charge in Myanmar at the moment. Of course, also to make sure that we have as inclusive dialogue as possible as we move on this path of dialogue and consultation. Certainly, I think it is in the ASEAN interest to listen to all the different stakeholders, and then also to push the implementation of 5-point consensus to ensure that there is a progress on the ground. I think that will take time. We should not push too fast and too hard, but I think it is, we want to make sure that once the dialogue start to take up the ground, the speed and the momentum can pick up and can maintain momentum. Yeah. Now, of course, it has been decided that the special envoy of ASEAN will be the special envoy of ASEAN chair. So this is called the rotating leadership and responsibility. So for Cambodia, of course, will be coming up. I think our role is going to be trying to be constructive. Our role is going to be to engage constructively with those in Myanmar, particularly those in power, but also those who are outside power. Our power. The idea is that we have the agenda before us. The agenda is to, on the one hand, to have the dialogue, and then of course to push for the implementation of 5-point consensus, and of course to make sure that Myanmar will return to the normal ASEAN process. Okay, the Myanmar disengagement from the recent ASEAN meetings, it was Myanmar's choice, but we want to make sure that Myanmar should return to the full ASEAN normal process, normal ASEAN process. Now, of course, as the chair, like I say, we will work with all the different parties concerned in Myanmar, but also within ASEAN, we have to work with all ASEAN member states and also the dialogue partners that have similar interests as well. Now, of course, Cambodia has the experience. We had our own internal problem, but I think our experience showed that at the end of the day, it's the national interest, not party interest, not group interest, not military interest, but the national interest will be the most important thing for the country and the people. And that will come about through national reconciliation. I think that national reconciliation is going to be important, and that will be based on trust building. Now, the issue of why we failed to issue the joint communique in 2012, I can share with you. One ASEAN member state or ASEAN collectively engage in an inflexible approach. We only harm ourselves. In a joint communique, we have like more than 20 pages, negotiated, paragraph by paragraph, line by line, based on ASEAN practice. And I have been engaging in ASEAN for a long time already. Anything that we agree on already, we don't go back. Anything we don't agree, we bracket. And in the final stage, if we still cannot agree on, we move the text into the minutes of the meeting, reports of meetings, to reflect that yes, we have differences in our opinions, and that can be reflected in the minutes of the meeting. But for public consumption, all right, because joint communique is basically an ASEAN position. But when some member state, a few member states disagree and refuse to accept them and to decide to throw away joint communique, there's nothing chair can do. You see, it's like I say, it's ASEAN success. It depends on ASEAN collective role, responsibility, and vision. And I think no one can blame Cambodia for that, because I was there. I could see that, when two member states of ASEAN were adamant that this must be in the ASEAN way is that when we don't have a consensus, what we can do is to use the old language of the same issue, and at the same time we reflect the matter and to report the meeting. So I think it was very important that we could not agree on the issuance of joint communique back in 2012 and then blame Cambodia. And I think that, our more than 20 pages, there's only 2 small paragraphs that we cannot agree on, you see? And I think to blame Cambodia, to scapegoat Cambodia for this, I think in the end, of course, it's collectively, it's an ASEAN failure. because I think we should learn from this lesson. All of us should learn from this lesson. Because I was on the high-level task force on drafting ASEAN Charter. I was representing Cambodia at the time, so I understand clearly. We drafted the ASEAN Charter, the high-level task force, and we cleared through that as in foreign minister and through the leaders in regular time, in real time, in less than 1 year. We got the ASEAN Charter through. And of course, I think our colleague from Ambassador from Indonesia just now mentioned about the need to review ASEAN Charter. I think when we drafted ASEAN Charter, I'm going to move a little bit on the future, but because they come back to the question of ASEAN chairmanship. We can look at, because in the ASEAN Charter, we already have two areas that we allow when ASEAN member state decide to review ASEAN Charter. Because the way we drafted ASEAN Charter basically is to make sure we don't have too many amendments in a short period of time. Otherwise, when you have too many amendments in a short period of time for a charter that is it's not very lengthy like European Union, which has more than several hundred pages. For ASEAN, it's very, I think what we have employed is more strategic ambiguity. There's a lot in there. But what is allowed is that we can define in terms of reference, okay, or rules of procedure, or maybe guidelines that can be derived from any points in ASEAN Charter. Wherever it's not clear, we can do a term of reference on that point. You see, this is my personal view, but I think yes, so reviewing ASEAN Charter, it has been called for some time already. But I think we have to look at the strategic direction of where we want to take ASEAN and how we can make ASEAN strong and all of that. So I think this is what I want to say is that yes, the role of the chair and the role of special envoy in engagement in Myanmar is going to be critical. Particularly, we will have to stay focused on engagement and dialogue, and to make sure that we are able to move things productively and to make progress on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Ambassador Ade Padmo, please.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I do believe have three questions. First about the ASEAN more focusing economic at the beginning, and Indonesian government prioritize on climate change this year, and thirdly, how to engage with Myanmar, especially with the principle of non-interference. If I hope there's three questions that are addressed to me. I try to first on the ASEAN at the beginning, focusing economic. It's not fully right, because if the Bangkok Declaration, of course, number one is economic, but that's the second is also political. Political security is also important for and focus for ASEAN since the beginning. In fact, in the first summit, ASEAN summit in Bali, what we are be able to agree and come up with a milestone is the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. The TEC is the basis, the first legal instrument of ASEAN at the time, focusing both to maintain peace and security in the region, as well how we promote the cooperation. In fact, as nowadays this Treaty of Amity or the TEC, many countries, they would like to accede to the TEC. It showed that the confidence and on ASEAN, and also it also reflects a reflection that the future of ASEAN is still relevant, and probably is a brighter one when, especially, where be able to find solution and on the Myanmar crisis. Oh yeah, the other question is also about I missed about Indonesia bridging ASEAN and Myanmar. I don't know whether it's correct. You know, Indonesia bridging ASEAN and Myanmar. Actually, we all as you know, ASEAN, Indonesia, ASEAN as a whole. We, as I said at the beginning, we try to help the Myanmar. Of course, Indonesia have some idea approach, you know, and this idea approach of what we discuss with all our colleague in ASEAN member state, and whatever we take individually or bilaterally, we always consult, discuss first with our other members. So because for us, for Indonesia, is ASEAN have to be in the forefront in addressing this, but we as Indonesia or other individual members that can do whatever they can in strengthening ASEAN effort. As regards the priorities of Indonesia government, is also not fully true. Of course, if you read the newspaper today, this time, you know, everybody focus on the COP 2026. So it's common, but it doesn't mean that we Indonesian government not prioritize the Myanmar issue. We continue monitor and we continue among ASEAN member states discuss on my level, on the higher level. Even the ministers, you know, I do believe we continue consult each other and discuss the matter. But of course, if you read the current newspaper or website or whatever, this COP is become hot issue now, because this is an important issue, because the COP have impact not only ASEAN but the whole world, the whole people of this planet. So of course we need to also focus this issue. How to engage with Myanmar, especially the non-interference issue. For Indonesia, non-interference, and I do believe all ASEAN member states, non-interference is important. It's important principle. This is how we be able to survive. We operate for more than 50 years. We respect and non-interference. Nevertheless, sometimes we also need to recalibrate about this non-interference. On the case of the issue of Myanmar crisis, unfortunately, what happened in Myanmar is have the impact of the image and credibility of ASEAN. So ASEAN must and has to be involved. We not try into this. This is why I at the beginning, ASEAN is like give as family. We are family. You know, we lend our hand. Look what we can do. We will want to help you. We not intervene, but we are going to help you. But on the other side, again, I said that they have to sincere when receiving our help, because if we are if we are not helping you, it's have a bad impact not only to Myanmar and hopefully not, but it will have an impact on ASEAN. So I think this is how ASEAN continue operate constructive engagement. We have a one voice in ASEAN. We discuss many options, many approaches, and find which one's the better approach. And we also, ask our partners to provide a conducive environment as well for ASEAN to do its tasks in this issue. And I see that our partners, our external partners, is continue helping, supporting us and supporting ASEAN approach. So what else that Myanmar, have not? What else Myanmar not to accept this help from ASEAN? We are is helping as a family. I have to underline ASEAN is a family. Sometimes we have differences, but sometimes we have to listen from all of us to find good solution and move forward with the more better ASEAN. Thank you.
All right, Ambassador, sorry, there's a little bit glitch. There's a technical issue, so we just stopped. So anyway, thank you, Ambassador, for your response. We still have a few more questions to go for both speakers. The first one is from Bambang Harimurti. Basically, he asked, because as we know, Myanmar now is facing also issues internally with the ethnic armed groups. There are some separatist movements going on. And how do you see ASEAN's standpoint in helping Myanmar, but then regarding this issue as well, regarding how to deal with the ethnic armed groups? And also there's a comment particularly on this local actors, whether ASEAN will certainly engage the local actors in order to push for a dialogue among the stakeholders. And there's also another question from Paul Sutirak asking how to move dialogue and engagement forward if the junta doesn't seem to trust ASEAN. Can ASEAN have a role in Myanmar crisis if the junta doesn't believe in the utility of the ASEAN way? And from Shankari, I think this is also a very important question, because again, back to the idea of having collective effort of ASEAN, she's basically asking, is it possible to set a mechanism for a team of special envoys representing the current chair, the former, and the future chairs? This might look like a troika, which is not necessarily applicable for this type of crisis. But the idea of having a collective chair, would this be something relevant in dealing with the crisis? So I would like to listen how Minister Kao Kim Hourn respond to some of these questions, and also Ambassador Ade Padmo. Please, Minister.
Thank you very much. I think the idea of ASEAN Troika was there. It has been used before. But the wisdom of the ASEAN leader this time is to use a special envoy. I think it's a little bit different from the ASEAN Troika. In a way is that I think we want to focus to make sure that ASEAN has one voice. Because the Troika, you might have 3 different views on one issue, for example, which is normal to have different views. So again, the idea is that the special envoy ASEAN chair will represent ASEAN for that particular year. And all we have to work to support the ASEAN chair and the special envoy. I think how to reach out and engage the local actors. this is quite important, particularly the special importance of the ASEAN chairs. And like you said before, that we'll have to listen to the different views, as many views as possible. But it's not at all possible to listen all of everything. But the idea is to engage the different stakeholders that are quite influential in Myanmar, for example. So in this case, I say, yes, special envoy will have to listen, and then we'll have to engage, and then we'll have to encourage Myanmar to go along, subscribe, and implement the 5-point consensus as the ASEAN leaders have agreed on, including Myanmar. Now, whether Myanmar believe in ASEAN or not, I think they believe in ASEAN. That's why they join ASEAN. Okay, and we still believe that they still have, they still believe in ASEAN, because at the end of the day, it has been ASEAN that has been actively supporting Myanmar. So yes, I think the point that we need to give the space and time to Myanmar, but at the same time, I think we should not be shy away from stay engaged and then take initiative in leading the dialogue and discussion with Myanmar, because ASEAN has many years experiences in terms of resolving different issues, whether internal ASEAN member state, within ASEAN member state, or whether bilateral issues. ASEAN have taken it all. I think ASEAN today is different from ASEAN of yesterday. Yesterday, there were a lot of shyness, not taking up the sensitive issues. But today, I think ASEAN has moved beyond this idea that ASEAN will stay away, stay out of all the internal problems. Of course, the spirit and the policy of non-difference there is clearly spelled out in the ASEAN Chapter. But yet, the point that we're having as a family member is there also. And I remember at one point when we had our border problem between Cambodia and Thailand, it was taken up at the highest level at the ASEAN summit. And during one of the meetings, during the summit in Indonesia, for example, it took up that matter. And so I think in the past 10 years, we can say that ASEAN has moved on and making a lot of progress. And this time again, I think ASEAN is not shy at all in engaging with Myanmar, including, I can say this is that we are negotiating, we are having dialogue, we stay engaged, we find all different ways how we can make progress. And then I think let's not blame ASEAN that this is a failure, it's not working. Time is very short now, and the complexity issues that requires time, require a lot of efforts. And I think there are some progress already moving forward. Is that yes, we want to see more progress. We want to see the cessation of violence in Myanmar. We want to see humanitarian assistance being delivered to people regardless of who they are on the ground. We want to see dialogue that Special Envoy ASEAN will be able to meet with different stakeholders. Of course, each trip maybe Special Envoy cannot meet all, maybe selectively, and then move on. The idea, again, this engagement is about confidence building, about trust building. And I think we make sure that trust must be fully restored between Myanmar and ASEAN, and that's the key.
Thank you, Minister. Ambassador Ade, please.
Yes, thank you. I also some of the Excellency Kao Kim Hourn mentioned. I agree. Myanmar, I think Myanmar still trusts ASEAN. And so far with all the whatever the decision by ASEAN, Myanmar is still part of our family. Although how to build confidence and trust for the current authority in Myanmar toward ASEAN, and there's no other way. In fact, for me, my personal view, no other way that Myanmar can come out from this situation if Myanmar not engage with and continue using ASEAN. There is no other way. In fact, as many some has been said, the experience in the past, it show how the Myanmar be able to come up with the situation for many years, but with the assistance and support by ASEAN. There's no other way. There's so far, at this stage, there is no way other than engage with ASEAN. I have a question. I try to compile about the situation, domestic situation in Myanmar, separatism, local actors. In fact, Indonesia is helping Myanmar bilaterally in the past, and how we deal about the the domestic issues about separatism. How do we build reconciliation? Our experience. In the past, if I'm not mistaken, we invite several government official visit Aceh, and so they can listen and with the people in Aceh, how we be able to reconcile, because as Indonesia experienced a long issue on Aceh. This we share our experience. We're not lecturing; we just share it so they can find out how we able to settle issue in Indonesia. So we helping Myanmar. We will continue this if they like us to do more in sharing our experience. Local actors is very important, but I think local actor has to play as I said, is important. It's important, but has to be credible and be accepted to all the people. This is we would like to engage with the local actor. Of course, the authority have to be open for ASEAN to to be able to communicate with local actors, whatever we think is necessary. And lastly, about the idea of troika, it's different. It's I think it's not for me personally. It's not compatible in this particular issue. Why? Because the special envoy is supported by the foreign ministers. I think all the ASEAN foreign minister not also give their view, their guidance, their wisdom, and also their thought. So I think one special envoy is enough, and supported by all ASEAN foreign minister who always give consulting advice to the special envoy. So I think this I can share my about and response on the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Ade Padmo Sarwono. We come to the conclusion of the session. So if Pak Jusuf or directors from CSIS would like to say something, Pak Jusuf, you want to say something?
I think we should thank the discussions, you know. But of course, the problem strategically is still a very big problem, and for ASEAN to face. The last 40 years for ASEAN was beautiful because it was a very normal times, so to say. Now we are facing abnormal times, and therefore we need also an ASEAN that is stronger, that is more decisive, that is willing to put heads together to overcome some of the challenges that is very real. Myanmar is only one, and only the beginning. And so therefore, you know, with due respect, you know, it is not easy to all the governments of ASEAN concerned, because this is also a problem that the EU is facing, leadership and unity. And therefore, you know, ASEAN is facing the same. So I think if we don't really get our heads together and our strengths together, it will be very difficult years in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Jusuf.
Okay, can I say a little bit before you closing? Is that okay?
Okay, please, Minister.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to be brief, okay?
Yeah.
But first, on the special envoy, I want to come back to this issue a little bit. The special envoy has the full mandate, the legitimacy, and the full support of ASEAN member states. So that's why I think it's someone that we trust, that we trust to engage in this role and responsibility. So there's no question about it. So I think if we have three, then it, like the troika, I mean, then maybe some question of trust there. That's why we have three to team up. But one is enough, I think, to engage. Now, come back to the ethnic group, armed groups. Of course, Myanmar is very complex. But in the case of Cambodia, we had a history of between 1423 and 1998. Cambodia was never under one government until 1998. But I think this came about through the true spirit of national reconciliation. We must put aside our differences and then move forward. And that's going to be critical also for Myanmar. It's that we can share our experience. Now, in my maybe conclusion, it's just very brief, is that despite all the challenges we face, the future ASEAN is still very bright. One, of course, that right now you see ASEAN dialogue partners want to elevate their partnership with ASEAN. Some want to move from the dialogue partnership to strategic partnership to comprehensive partnership. In the case of recently Australia and China, for example, that ASEAN agreed upon. Then I've seen also that more countries now request to become dialogue partner with ASEAN. Okay, we're dialogue partners, development partners, sectoral partners. But in fact, recently we have already allowed UK to become a full dialogue partner. And as other countries are also requesting, they are on the line. I mean, of course, the queuing up also. So it shows that there's a lot of interest in ASEAN remain there. And third, of course, the present and future challenges of ASEAN. We will always have challenges, and that will unify ASEAN. The present and future challenges will make ASEAN strong, will make ASEAN more resilient. And I think it's going to be critical is that ASEAN has had faced confronted many challenges in the past and crises. But each time, of course, ASEAN was able to resolve or work out. So I think it's going to be critical. The future also will be to make ASEAN stronger. How to make ASEAN stronger? It's going to be through more institutionalization. Of course, at a certain level that will make ASEAN become more effective, more efficient, and more practical and more resilient. I think it's going to be critical. Now, of course, this next year when Cambodia chair ASEAN will focus on, ACT, addressing challenges together. We're going to work together. ASEAN basically is a collective diplomacy, collective strategy, collective wisdom. I think that's going to be critical. We have to continue to work together. Now, finally, my final thought is that, yes, it is critical for ASEAN to continue to enhance its unity and centrality and continue to build on ASEAN resilience, because this would reflect ASEAN well if we have unity and centrality in all the things that we engage, and will empower ASEAN beyond the present generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. I will not draw any conclusion because I think all of us can draw their own conclusion after listening to very insightful presentations from both speakers, Minister Kao Kim Hourn and Ambassador Ade Padmo Sarwono. And one thing for sure, there is a lot of homework for ASEAN to do. As Pa Jusuf mentioned, a lot of challenges ahead. And we look forward for the new chairman to really guide ASEAN to restore its credibility and relevance to be more effective and efficient organization in the future. Otherwise, it will be losing its relevance, unfortunately, in the future. I apologize for the questions that I don't raise in these discussions because of the limitation of time, but certainly a lot of things that we can discuss in the future. So once again, on behalf of CSIS, thank you for all your participations, especially for the speakers, the distinguished speakers, and see you in the next event of CSIS, particularly still, hopefully the crisis is not going on, but we will definitely still have another initiatives and discussions on the Myanmar. Thank you so much and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep safe and keep healthy.
Thank you. Terima kasih Pak Dubes.
Sama-sama.
Yeah.